Hello everybody, this is Dr. Jenkins. We are back and we're going to begin this next little unit talking about ergogenic aids. Okay, so we're going to be talking about what are some of the most common supplements and ergogenic aids out there. Excuse me. We'll divide this into two different PowerPoint presentations, one on pharmacological ergogenic aids and the other on chemical ergogenic aids. I realize that I'm of a certain age, so maybe you may not remember when Barry Bonds was chasing Hank Aaron's record for having the most home runs in Major League Baseball history. Of course, Bonds was definitely using steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs. This is one of my favorite signs. Here's Barry Bonds in the corner, right? This is going to work here. Well, let me just charge this while I'm talking, because I can multitask. Let's plug this. My little pen needs to charge for a hot second. But you can see here, what they mean is Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth did it on hot dogs and beer, because he was rather portly, not steroids. Okay. So here's the breakdown. This first PowerPoint, we're going to be talking about the pharmacological and chemical ergogenic aids. And I think I misspoke at the beginning, so I apologize. This first PowerPoint, we're going to be talking about pharmacological and chemical. And then the next PowerPoint is on nutritional. All right? My pen is charging, but I would like you to know the definitions of these two. We already talked about what an ergogenic aid is, right? So just review, make sure you know it. An ergogenic aid is anything that is purported to improve performance. Anything that people think will improve your athletic performance. Okay, ergogenic aid, anything that is meant to improve athletic performance. Whether it does or not is a different story. But an ergogenic aid is something that is meant to improve athletic performance. And we have them here divided into two categories. Basically, the chemical ones, also known as pharmacological, these are ones that are not derived from actual nutrients. So things that are going to fall into the category of pharmacological and chemical would be steroids, growth hormone, caffeine, okay? Versus nutritional ergogenic aids, which are things that are byproducts of nutrients and food, or plant for that matter. And what's going to fall into the nutritional ergogenic aid category would be things like branched chain amino acids, L-carnitine, and so forth. So the idea of them is the same, something that is meant to improve performance, but what they are made of is different, okay? Again, my little pen is charging, but I would like you to know these definitions. Here's our outline, a little bit of a background, and then we're going to talk about this list. I actually added one, lactate. Don't worry, you will not have to know all of them, because that would be kind of ridiculous, right? Okay. So here's just saying what I already said. An ergogenic aid is anything that is meant to aid or improve something related to athletic performance. See if my pen is working now. Ergogenic aid. Something meant to improve performance. This is the abbreviated definition. Something meant to improve performance. Whether it is an improvement through improving aerobic capacity, whether it's an improvement through improving your muscle volume and density, whether it's an improvement through aiding recovery, right? So how it improves performance really depends on the supplement, okay? At the bottom here are some people who have been charged with taking ergogenic aids illegally, because some of them are legal. For example, caffeine that has been shown to be an ergogenic aid in certain situations, and it is legal up to a certain amount in the NCAA, in the NFL, and so forth. Marion Jones there on the left, Sean Merriman, Floyd Landis, who had his Tour de France title taken away, and then, of course, there's our friend Roger Clemens. And if you remember the congressional hearings, Roger Clemens, quote-unquote, misremembered those instances where he may have taken something that was banned. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, here is the history of ergogenic aids. I will not be asking you questions about this on an exam, but I just wanted to give a bit of a timeline just to make the point that these have been around for a long time. So even though they've come to the forefront in the last 20 years maybe in certain sports, they are not new. It's as old as mankind, the idea that if there's something that's going to help me, I'm going to try it. And particularly if it's something that's going to help me that my opponent doesn't have, or if it's a shortcut to getting faster, stronger, better, I'm going to take it. You can see there the first Olympic Games in Athens, Greece. There's some evidence to say that athletes ate mushrooms that were hallucinogenic. If you're hallucinogenic, you're not going to feel the pain of running a marathon in 2 hours and 15 minutes, right? You can read through the rest of this. Currently, you can see I made a note there about the internet. So with this new technological age, it's just made the ability to market and sell them greater, which means that we've had more people come out to try and sell more. But this will not be on an exam, okay? See if I can get my pen to work again. There we go. This is something that may not be getting as much traction in the last couple of years, but it was about 5-10 years ago. You don't have to know this either, but this is certainly a scary idea. I'll let you read that on your own, but it will not be on the test. Okay, we have already talked about this. Ergogenic aids are not regulated by the FDA. They're considered a supplement, which means that, based off of the DHEA Act of 1994, companies have to submit paperwork to the FDA, but that's it. There's really no regulation. There's no regulation of what they can say on their packaging. There's no regulation of potential negative side effects. There's no regulation of what is actually contained within each pill. These are some other things that I would like you to consider. It's probably no secret that I'm not a big fan, simply because when there's an environment where there's a lack of regulation and where it is capitalistic, where people just want to make money, it really results in a wild, wild west where you don't know what you're ingesting, we don't know the long-term side effects, and certainly in my opinion, it's not worth it. However, as we go through these ergogenic aids, we will talk about the ones that have been shown to be effective through research and safe. That list is small, but understanding the desire of people to get bigger, faster, stronger, and better, I understand this is not going away. I just want you to be more educated, right? So hopefully when you go out and people are asking you these questions from now on, you have a little bit more knowledge in your back pocket so you can better answer their questions. Okay, I am not going to go through these individually. These are mechanisms of action that we're going to talk about. If there's a potential way to do something, there is a supplement out there for it, whether it's to stimulate the nervous system, make us be able to produce more energy, add additional fuel sources. We'll talk about all these. Don't worry about it now. But really, supplements, ergogenic aids, these days, there's so many that they really attempt to improve pretty much every aspect that we can think of. Although I'm sure companies will think of more. Okay, so this chapter is on our chemical ones. These are ones that are not derived from food, remember? Next chapter, we'll be talking about the nutritional ones. That's next chapter. Nutritional ergogenic aids. Our chapter right now is going to be the chemical or otherwise known as pharmacologic ergogenic aids. For each one that we talk about, to try and make this standardized, we're going to go through all of these things. I will let you know which ones you need to know for the test and which ones it's just FYI. All right, we're going to start with the big boy, and I would like you to know the information about steroids. Okay? You don't need to know the specific names. I've just given you these. Sometimes you see something like Winstrol, and you don't really know that it's actually testosterone. So I just want to give you some of the common actual marketed names, but you don't need to know the name specifically. This is obviously a big one. So what is the description? And I'm going to circle what I'd like you to know. Well, simply put, anabolic steroids is a synthetic version of what humans already have naturally, which is the hormone testosterone. Synthetic just means that it's produced outside of the body. So men and women, because women produce some testosterone too, men and women naturally produce testosterone. So the idea is, wow, boy, testosterone helps us build more muscle. So if I can take more of it, then I could potentially build more muscle. Okay? When we talk about the effects of testosterone in the body, it has two parts to it. So physiologically, testosterone has anabolic effects and also androgenic effects. The ones that could potentially help an athlete would be the anabolic effects. And you may actually see these referred to as anabolic steroids. And sorry about that. Let's actually circle it. So really, it makes us build more protein for muscles. So when an athlete takes steroids, they are purposely looking for the anabolic effects. And the anabolic effects of testosterone are to increase the production of muscle. Now, it just so happens that we cannot separate the anabolic from the androgenic. So when you make testosterone on your own, or when you take it synthetically, you can't separate and say, well, I only want the anabolic effects, not the androgenic. They come together. The androgenic effects would be effects that lead to male sexual secondary sex characteristics. This could be like growth of hair. So men have more hair on their chests, potentially on their legs, whatever. Deepening of voice. So if you think about a teenage boy going through puberty, what you're seeing is the androgenic effects of that boy's body all of a sudden producing a shit ton, excuse my language, of testosterone. And that's when we see these male secondary sex characteristics. I'm not going to ask you this specifically, but I do want you to know that the effects go together. So it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. We want the muscle building because that's what's going to help performance. We really don't care about the androgenic effect. But you can't separate one from the other. All right, so what are the potential ergogenic effects? It's all about increasing muscle mass and increasing power. This is not having an effect on aerobic capabilities, which should not be surprising, because things that are going to impact aerobic capacity have to help the heart or have to help blood flow in some way. This is strictly only talking about skeletal muscle. Guess what? Research has shown that testosterone, synthetic testosterone, does work. I mean, there's really no denying it. You know, if you are a fan of history, look at the Eastern Bloc countries before the fall of communism in the Soviet Union. If you look at the East German teams, the Russian teams for the Olympics, they were just machines, particularly the women who were taking steroids, who were taking testosterone. All right, what are some of these safety issues? There could be some short-term adverse effects, like acne and mood changes. Maybe you've heard of something called roid rage. When we have more testosterone than we normally have, one of the side effects is that it makes us a little bit more hormonal. And in the case of more hormonal for testosterone, a little bit shorter fuse, more prone to outbursts of anger. Absolutely. In terms of long-term effects, one of the things that I want to point out is, in men, it can lead to testicular atrophy. Atrophy means to get smaller. This is the opposite of hypertrophy, which is what's happening in the muscles when you take testosterone. And if you ask men who have taken testosterone, they will tell you this happens. Because what happens is once a man begins to take synthetic testosterone, all of a sudden their body has more testosterone than what they produced. So because of negative feedback and how our body works, their body is going to get the signal, oh, we have plenty of testosterone. We don't need to make as much naturally. So the testicles will actually shrink because they're not doing as much they're not producing as much testosterone. Why? Because the body already has plenty because someone's taking it synthetically. This is usually reversible, so it's not a huge issue if the testosterone is taken appropriately. Gynecomastia is something that's interesting. Won't be on the test, but I just want to point it out. This is colloquially known as man boobs. Boobs. How about I can't spell boobs? I can't. So here we have a gentleman who was taking testosterone and he has excess breast tissue development. This will not be on the test, but it is absolutely a side effect of testosterone. So if a man is taking testosterone synthetically, he's going to have a lot more testosterone in his body than he's used to. And because of that, there's going to be some excess testosterone. The muscles can only take up so much testosterone at a time. So you're likely to have some excess testosterone. And what I want to point out is when there is excess testosterone in a male, one of the things the body will do with it is convert it into estrogen. Estradiol, same thing as estrogen. So it's just a case of the body, the male body, having too much testosterone than it knows what to do with. So instead of trying to keep up with breaking it down and peeing out the excess product, one thing it can easily do is convert that testosterone, excess testosterone, into estrogen, which is of course going to lead to secondary female sex characteristics such as breast tissue development. And if you look at these two, this is the molecular structure of testosterone and then the molecular structure of estrogen. They're very similar. So it's a very easy conversion. So just a note for the men out there interested in taking testosterone, you might get man boobs, otherwise known as gynecomastia. You should know that this is not legal. Okay? So in the US, not legal. Some athletes will still do it and hopefully not get caught. Not legal in sports, I should say, because in the healthcare field, anabolic steroids are used. You think about people that have leukemia or certain types of cancer or the AIDS disease. Sometimes anabolic steroids can be helpful to someone who actually needs it. But in sports, it is not legal. This is all extra information, but if someone is going to take anabolic steroids or testosterone, even though I would discourage it, It's very important that it's taken properly. There's different routes of administration. It can be delivered as a pill. It can be taken as an intramuscular injection. You could put a patch on the skin that releases a slow dose over time. It's very important, again, not on the test, but this is just extra information. It's very important that the person who does this cycles. In other words, takes testosterone for a period of time and then stops for a period of time. And they time that with their desired effect of when they want to be the strongest, for example. Sometimes people will, quote unquote, stack, take several steroids at once. Some people will take other drugs meant to mask the appearance that there's more testosterone in the body. Who was it? Manny Ramirez? Do I have a slide on that next? No, I don't. Manny Ramirez, ex-Red Sox player, got busted for taking a female hormone that I think only females who want to get pregnant take. And the reason he was taking it is because one of its side effects is that it masks testosterone. So he was taking testosterone and trying to mask the effect that he was taking it by taking this female hormone that pregnant women take. When he got caught, he said that he mistook it for a pill that his wife had. Here are some statistics. This will not be on the test, but you might be surprised that if you look at the statistics in terms of prevalence of who's taking it, yes, there'll be certain high-level athletes who'll be tempted to take it, but a lot of times it is your weekend warrior middle-class man who has a little bit excess income, who really wants to show off at the gym or whatever the case may be. Yeah. And they tend to be smart people, but maybe not smart in how to take it. Okay. All right. Let's move on to growth hormone. This is also something I'd like you to know some things about. The popularity of growth hormone has absolutely peaked in the last 5 or 10 years. It's become much more popular than it ever was. Here are some examples. You don't need to know them, okay? But I would like you to know, what is growth hormone? Similar to testosterone, it's a hormone produced naturally by the body. Just like testosterone is a hormone produced naturally in the body, growth hormone is also a hormone naturally produced in the body. Now, there's, of course, a lot of differences. Testosterone, even though women have some, testosterone is produced in much larger quantities in men. Whereas growth hormone, if you were to relate it to mass of the individual, there's very similar rates of release of growth hormone in both men and women. Okay, what is its proposed mechanism of action? Well, it's called growth hormone for a reason. Because what growth hormone does in the body naturally is it stimulates growth. This shouldn't be very difficult for you folks to remember. What is the effect of growth hormone? Well, it stimulates growth, particularly of bone and muscle. I mean, think about it. Think about an adolescent when they go through a growth spurt. Guess what? You do a blood test, they've got higher levels of growth hormone. Think about someone who gets injured, and then as they're recovering or rehabbing from that injury, they're going to have higher levels of growth hormone. We have higher levels of growth hormone in the morning. So if you were to do a blood test or if you were to take it, you should take it in the morning. Okay? All right. Other proposed mechanisms of action you can read about, but won't be on the test. What about in athletes? And you might see growth hormone abbreviated as HGH, human growth hormone. What are the proposed benefits for athletes? Well, it stimulates bone and muscle growth. Some people say that it can allow you to compete longer. But one of the more interesting proposed mechanisms of action is that it allows for better recovery. Because it is during recovery, after all, that we are repairing that muscle tissue. And in the process of repairing that muscle tissue, we've got to regrow some of it. So I think logically, that makes sense, right? Okay. Let me just peek ahead. Safety, legal. Okay. What about the research? What does the research show? The research shows that this is not effective. And I'd like you to know that. So when they do studies, a scientific method study where you have one group of athletes who take growth hormone and another group of similar athletes who take a placebo, that's just a sugar pill or just nothing. When you do this, there is no significant difference between the groups. There doesn't seem to be more bone or muscle growth in those who take the growth hormone. There doesn't seem to be more recovery. However, what I will point out is that anecdotal evidence has shown some of this to be effective. Anecdotal evidence means that it's just hearsay. Someone at the gym said it. Someone over there said it. And I think what we might learn later, we might learn that there is a way to take growth hormone, and there is a way to objectively measure that it can help an athlete. The anecdotal evidence particularly is linked to better recovery. Okay, so I'd like you to know all this. So what we're saying is the scientific studies do not show that growth hormone is any benefit to athletes. Anecdotally, hearsay, people seem to say that it does in some way maybe help them with recovery. But recovery is a difficult thing to measure, right? So I'm going to leave a question mark because I think we have a lot to learn. Okay, is it safe? Obviously, we can see prolonged use can be bad. So prolonged use is bad. Shorter term usage, I think the jury's still out. There doesn't seem to be anything bopping us over the head in terms of taking HGH. I don't know that there's been enough scientific study to really come to a reasonable conclusion. These studies are technically really hard to carry out. It's hard to get people willing to take it. It's hard to get people to volunteer for a study where they may have to take it. They're much more likely to take it behind closed doors. And if you ask people about it, there is certainly a placebo effect where even if it doesn't help you, because you're taking something, you're more likely to report, yeah, it did help with recovery. I'm not kind of sure how, but I felt better the next day. Speaking as a physiologist, I don't feel comfortable with all the growth hormone that's coming out now, particularly because we cannot ensure the regulation of its production. Folks, you don't know who you're buying this from because the FDA is not regulating its manufacturing. So injecting with a needle or taking a pill, even though it's something your body produces naturally, you don't know what's in that pill. And we really don't have the long-term data to show what its potential side effects are. So I'm not a fan, but my job here is to present you with the information. Okay. Growth hormone, this is some older information. Growth hormone is banned in sports. We might find 15 years from now the culture changes a little bit because that's a whole other conversation to have, which is interesting. This is not a sports psychology, legal issues in sports class or an ethics class, but I think it is an interesting issue, right? If we can conclude that it is safe, and if a governing body of a sport sets out reasonable guidelines for what levels it will quote unquote allow, If people are taking it anyway behind closed doors, who's to say that they shouldn't be taking it? If it's safe, and so people have all sorts of opinions on that. But as of now, growth hormone is banned in sports. Okay, let's talk about amphetamines, and then we'll take a break and pick up the rest of these in our second video. I would like you to know amphetamines. You don't need to know these particular examples, but you may have heard of these. Even when I was in high school, football players I knew in high school were popping greenies from the convenience store. Okay. So what is it? That's really what this description is asking. So what are amphetamines? Well, there's something that's similar to what our body already produces. And we can think about epinephrine and serotonin. I'm going to circle serotonin. So amphetamine is a synthetic form of chemicals like serotonin. Epinephrine is known as adrenaline. So these are chemicals within our body that make us happy, like serotonin, or give us a little bit more energy, like adrenaline. So again, our body produces it naturally, but as an ergogenic aid, well, if naturally adrenaline gives us more energy and helps us to focus better, and serotonin makes us happy, why can't I take more? Then I can have even more energy and be even more focused. The proposed mechanism of action specifically to athletes and athletics would be that it is a stimulant. If you know anything about the body, serotonin and epinephrine, as well as norepinephrine, are known to be part of the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. And that means that they stimulate you, and they do a lot of things to help you prepare for that fight or flight. They do things like increase heart rate naturally, increase blood pressure. For athletes, in some instances, these can be good things. Because if I have a higher heart rate, I can pump more blood out to my working muscles. Okay, these certainly have been used by the military before, by students, because it keeps you awake longer. In athletes, it is purported to increase your concentration and to give you more energy. So I'd like you to know those two. As a stimulant, amphetamines are said to increase energy and increase concentration. This could potentially help, you should know this, both anaerobic and aerobic athletes. An anaerobic athlete would be like a sprinter or a weightlifter who's relying on energy systems that do not require energy. So anaerobic athletes would be doing mostly short bursts of high intensity activity, whereas an aerobic would be like a distance runner, where it's a lower intensity, but you're exercising for longer. So this could potentially help all types of athletes. Jason Giammi failed a test for amphetamines. They've been around for a really long time. Okay? What does the research show? Well, the research shows that it does work for students and military. So it can help. I mean, if you're on night guard at a military somewhere across the world, hell, I mean, I would consider taking an amphetamine if my job was to keep people alive. So it does help people as a stimulant stay awake longer, for example, and it may help with concentration. But there's no research that it shows any benefit to athletic performance. And that's pretty interesting because it has been used for a very long time by athletes. And for a long time, athletes have said, yeah, it helped me. But yet, when we do a scientific study where we have a control group and an experimental group, and we have a lot of controls in place, there does not seem to be a significant difference between the group. There are some safety issues. I'm not going to have you know these, but you can read about them. In the terms of the acute, nothing that's life-threatening, but it could be uncomfortable. And you should know that it is not legal in sports. Okay, great. Before I cut off this video, before our second one, it can be deadly. So there was a, if you're a cycling fan, which nobody is anymore, but there was a dude, 1967, fell off his bike, died right on the side of the road. Amphetamines were found in his blood and seemed to be a contributing factor towards his death. Okay, I'm going to cut this off. I'll see you for the next half.